think the Lord began to stir in Bill's heart a desire to share in relationship to the anniversary of 9/11, his own parallel experience, and how God, there's a kind of remarkable connection between these two events, the attack of 9/11 and an ordeal that God brought Bill and Lorraine through. So he came to me a while ago and just felt like the Lord put someone in his heart to share. And so I'm thrilled to give Bill an opportunity to come, and he's going to try to compress 10 years into the time we have this afternoon. So Bill, come and share with us what's on your heart.
Okay. Lord, I'm really looking to you. Give me words. It's an honor to be your servant, to be called, to be your child. Let that be clear in my heart and heart to all of us together. As I present and should praise you. Guess moving forward. I don't know if I'm going to be able to move forward. The Lord of hosts, whom you should regard as holy, and he shall be your fear. How often is that the case? Not the case. And he shall be your dread. Then he shall become your sanctuary. This is some home movies, and I want you to note the date. It was almost a year before I got to actually see these home videos. And as I'm watching it, I couldn't help but be distracted by the date. Because it's a countdown. There's the block party a few days before. This is one of the fire engines that would be part of my rescue. Only we're having fun at this point. It's kind of though to watch it happen in front of you and see your own family, see you having fun, but you know what's coming. Then suddenly, I'm not there. This is Garrett's 1-year-old birthday party. The day after. Of course, it's the first time I'm seeing it because I wasn't there. But it's kind of different to see your family going on with life without you. I mean, we all know that's true intellectually, but I actually got to see it. So today is the anniversary of 9/11. And here's a verse that to keep in mind. In the day of prosperity, be happy. But in the day of adversity, consider. God has made the one as well as the other. So there's something the Lord wants us to learn from that. We, as a nation, are reflecting on the events which gripped our country 10 years ago. But when you personally survive, while thousands perish or have their lives destroyed, it should be a very sobering wake-up call. After the accident 10 years ago, I found in the Bible someone who had an experience like mine. And of course, Lazarus came to mind. And I kind of superposed some of what I experienced on him. I was in a place where there was nothing I could do to help myself at all. And I was reminded of Jeff's situation. It was weird because I woke up, saw the emotions in everybody's eyes. They were happy to see me, but I don't know why. But the Lord was so close, and just as you start to find out, well, you shouldn't be alive, there's all these events happening, it just, you start to appreciate what the Lord in a whole new way, and His mercy and His love. Right after the accident, I was, giving my story, I was sharing with somebody, and they said, oh, that must have been such an intimate time with the Lord. And I had to come back and said, no, I was terrified in a way. It was an intimate time, but it was personal, very special. But it's kind of like coming face to face with Almighty God. He does hold our lives in His hand. You don't realize it until you go through something like that. And I was reminded of Aslan in the Chronicles of Narnia, how he will make no promises. You have to approach him. He's the lion. And you have to approach him. But he'll make no promises. So my desire is to kind of pull back the veil of what we went through and try and give you a picture of what it's like to go through something like this. And I'm here in a sense to remind myself of God's faithfulness. Because even years later you can forget and you go on with life.
And we knew that early on in the experience, and we still know day by day. And I am thankful. We are thankful. Not just for having been restored, but actually for being found worthy to be taken through the experience, to be further conformed to the image of Christ.
That was the end of the message I gave 10 years ago about the accident, and I know some of you were there for it. But what was interesting is what I said there was not, I passed my notes, I was done with the sermon, and it was just like the Lord was saying, well, you got to say one more thing. And that was just said spontaneously. And a lot of times we don't realize that Romans 8:28 has verse 29 after it. He also predestined us to become conformed to the image of His Son. So you have to ask some questions about the whole concept of Romans 8:28. Are we called according to His purpose? Is that what we're really about? Did all things work together for good? I mean, I was in pretty serious shape, and a lot of you weren't there for the time, so you're going to learn. What is it like? What's it take to be conformed to the image of His Son? And is it our heart's desire to really be glorified by Him? So I'm going to show you another verse, Romans 8:17. And if children, heirs also, heirs of God, and fellow heirs of Christ, if indeed we suffer with Him, so that we may also be glorified with Him. So that. And that doesn't sound very pleasant. I've been reading a book, The Invisible Hand, I read by R.C. Sproul. And in it, he goes through it, he spends a lot of time in Romans 8:28, and it was kind of eye-opening and helpful. I mean, being in a time of unemployment, I'm looking for God's hand to work in our lives. And in this case, he and his wife were in a the worst train wreck, I guess, in history. And him and his wife were one of the few who survived. And he had this to say: I knew that on the horizontal plane of history, the train wreck was a horrible tragedy. I also knew that on the vertical plane, there are no accidents. I understand that the invisible hand of providence was involved in the accident, quote unquote, and it was one of those events that worked together for those who love the Lord. And of course, just about everybody else on the train was killed. The doctrine of providence leaves no room for faith, blind or otherwise. God is not blind, neither is He capricious. For Him, there are no accidents. With God, there are no cases of chance events. There are no cases. And if we push the question to the ultimate level and ask the question, what are the chances that things happen by chance? The only appropriate answer we can give is not a chance. Accidents are events we do not intend to take place. But there is another intentionality that transcends our intentionality, the intentions of God. And here's the point that it comes to after no accidents: chance is a repugnant term to ascribe to the actions of God. And this is Genesis 50:20 concerning what Joseph said after his brothers had betrayed him and gone through all this thing. He says, for you meant evil against me. I want to get that, realize, he didn't mince words. They meant evil against him. That was their intentions. And he experienced it. Destroyed everything that his past life. He had to go live a whole completely different life. But God meant it for good in order to bring about this present result, to preserve many people. So, God is not, it has overruled everything, no matter how bad things appear. And here's a statement that I think everybody needs to take home with them. It is one of the most difficult tasks of the practicing Christian. It involves not only believing in God, but believing God. Because he says that. All things work together for good. It's not an option. Either we believe it, and we believe God and his word, or we don't. So, what is our story? What I'm about to show you, I'm not saying this to brag about what God's done in my life. Well, I'm going to say what God's done in my life, but not brag about what I was able to do. I graduated from College with honors. Now, that may sound impressive, but you have to understand, I got to notice that I was about to be put on academic probation. And I got it the day I had to file the appeal. And the whole thing of graduating later with honors is the work that God did. I watched him do so many things during that time. So many things. Just bring order into chaos. I had a job in electronic music for 6 years, designing musical instruments. God told me months before that came about that he was going to do that. And I was doing job hunting, looking for this job that God said I'm going to have. And saying no in the middle of interviews, no, this is the job I'm looking for, while I was unemployed. And then God worked it out. I went in for an interview that was right here in Persephone, right near our house. And it says, and the next day, I guess he called back and says, can you start next week? And then he called me back later, can you start tomorrow? I mean, it was just like that. I was unemployed all the time, and bang. Suddenly I'm in a career that God told me ahead of time. And what happened, there's so many stories of miracles along the way. But it was all God doing it, not me. I've designed telecom equipment for all these companies and many others, but there's a story behind each one of these companies. Times when I was thinking about the Associated Press, AP. There was one time where I'm in the middle trying to get something working, nothing's working. I just get behind one of the racks in Rockefeller Center in New York City and just start walking back and forth, pacing and praying in tongues. I'd given up. There was no way I could fix this thing. And then a miracle happened. I mean, and every one of these companies, I could tell you stories on and on. So the Lord did all these things. The Lord bringing Lorraine and I together. There's a whole major story in that. Little Richmond infertility. We have 4 children, but there was, some of you were there praying with us through that whole time. So, other bicycling is something I should tell you. But in college, I began bicycling. And it became immediately the constant vehicle for being alone with the Lord, growing in relationship. And that's been out from that time forward. So that's been through all this time of all what I've mentioned. So our journey begins. And I have a little something here, bicycle frame. Of course, most people know that this frame port is supposed to be normally here. But this one got banged back pretty hard, as you can tell. And I was on this bicycle. So, when this bicycle stopped, I kept going. The next thing that hit was my face. So some of you weren't there during that time. But essentially every bone in my face was broken in an instant. So I get an idea of the force involved to bend this back, and that's what hit my face. So that's where our story begins. And that was September 10th, the day before 9/11. And then, and I'm just trying to go through this just to show you what the Lord did, because it's kind of amazing to watch Him do unfolding things. Two neighbors were right outside. One came and turned me on my side because I was bleeding, obviously. Another one stayed until the police came. The driver ran and called 911. The chief of police was right nearby and arrived quickly. Another neighbor came and alerted Lorraine. EMT neighbor who lived right across the street comes in over, observes me going. I am going through the first stages of the brain shutdown. So he calls for the trauma helicopter. The Lord gives the brain an assurance that I would live. And that's another thing. Every one of these have a story behind it of why they, The Lord provides Lorraine with an ongoing sense of His presence throughout the entire time. Marianne sends out the prayer request, prayer chain. I mean, all these things are happening, just falling right into place. The second EMT neighbor brings the ambulance around. He has her sit on the front seat after I'm loaded in, driving me on, and for the purpose of reassuring her. I mean, she's just watched all this go on. Drives up the high school field near our house and surrounded by the fire department. Lorraine, sitting in the ambulance, finds herself singing, "Thank you, Jesus, for what you've done for me." As I'm being rushed across the field, on a stretcher, she releases me into God's hands. The police drives Lorraine to the University Hospital in Newark. When I arrive, I'm assigned the doctor, Assemblyman Eric Munoz. He's the head, he's the man who started the trauma department. He's my doctor. Marianne gets there and joins Lorraine, able to give her some counsel and encouragement. Mr. Scott arrives to pray for me. I'm stable enough to go through facial surgery the next day. I'm assigned Dr. Vincent Sicario and a whole team of surgeons, but he's the best in the whole state, maybe even more than just the state, most states in the region. Lorraine's mom is available to help. There's a whole story behind that. Lorraine's father is available to help assist in what's going on. Surgery began prior to 9/11, red alert. The whole hospital was shut down and put on red alert. But my surgeries had begun. There's the results. I don't know how many days later. I look really good. No matter how bad you think, I look really good. And I've heard I looked a lot worse, but nobody did pick this up. Surgery on the eye stopped. They were still going to do more surgery. That was deemed unnecessary. 8 days after the accident, I'm released from the hospital. I also took my first steps, and that's the whole story of it. I misunderstood the instructions. I got in a lot of trouble for doing that, but I did walk. They just told me to go to the bathroom. You didn't tell me I wasn't supposed to do it on my own. And then I went to Tesla for a while. I was released to go home just 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks. This is a picture the day before I was released from Tesla. By mid-November, I'm driving again. And I had no seizures. That's why they don't allow you to drive. One of the reasons, when your eyes are broken, sockets are broken, that's another reason. But they were afraid of seizures. I never had a seizure. I was working again by full-time by Christmas. I had no complications. Full facial sensation. I could feel everything. One of the surgeons was poking me around one time and said, "You can feel this, you can feel that." He was testing me. Because that's not normal. Teeth fully restored. It took 2 years, but Insurance covered all expenses. Many of you would think, well, most of us probably, I would probably think that's no miracle in itself. But here's the point of what I want to say. God provided full restoration. And I want to just talk about every item I went through. They're not typical. The results of every single item was not what you would typically expect to happen. Instead, it was the best possible outcome for every one of those items. And there's many more that, if we stopped and think about it, we could tell you about. It was a case where we actually got to the point where we're saying a miracle was happening every day, and we were watching it. And we saw those with less favorable results, the ones that had the typical things that happened to them. And it is very, very good. I'm standing here today and now we'll get into some of 9/11 because that is kind of related, and in my mind anyway. The number killed in the 9/11 attacks got 2819. But here's another number. How many lost a spouse? Here's another number. How many children lost their parents? You may ask what my accent has to do with these numbers. Well, that's now where my heart is. This is the suffering the Lord delivered my family from. So I want to kind of share some of the things. It's kind of difficult to share. One of the aspects of going through something like this is you never able to look at everything, the world, the same way again. You start to realize we don't get what we deserve. Especially when the contrast is so profound. I kind of know that now. It kind of, you don't want to have to go through something like this, but it's real now when you do. For most of us, it's just a biblical concept that we're not getting what we deserve. Not the same anymore. I had a chance to talk to two 9/11 people involved in 9/11 afterwards. Paul Little, we were vacationing the following summer, and it was kind of like funny because we started talking, and in seconds we understood each other. It was just like he shared his story and I shared my story with him. We were on the same page. He was up on the upper floor of the World Trade Center. He had come down just to drop off a memo or something like that. He was pushed the up button, and he was waiting patiently for the elevator to get there. And while he's standing there, he watches the first plane hit. So immediately pushes the down button. That's the only reason he's out of there. And it's lived. But the Lord had told him to speak to a specific person about the gospel, to share the Lord with him. And he knew that, and he was putting it off. When he got clear the World Trade Towers, the first thing he did was call home. The second thing was immediately call that man and share the gospel with him. It does something to you when you survive something like that. It changes your perspective. Suddenly that man's life became more important than preference or whatever. It wasn't inconvenient. It wasn't a low priority. He realized that if he hadn't done that, if he had died, that man would have never heard it. In the Lord's providence here, it's working, but it became more real to him. A mother and her daughter had her first day of kindergarten that day, and she had set things up at home, and then managed to get her and the daughter out. They survived, but they lived near the Tower, so therefore they couldn't get back to the apartment until many have
4 months
4 months.
until they were allowed to go back, and they never lived there again. They
Yeah.
never lived there again.
So I was talking with her, and it was funny because it's like, it changed you. We're grappling with this. How does it change you? And it was like, you don't put things off. Because what happened was, once she got back into the house, sitting on the counter was the special baking project that she had prepared to bless her daughter after the first day of kindergarten. It got lost. Those plans were gone in an instant. And you start to realize everything you hoped to accomplish could be gone in an instant. I shared this last time. We live with the delusion that our lives will continue according to our plans and that we will accomplish commendable things. We can be so wrong. And if you look at the two scriptures, this is what Jesus said. Nor shall you make any oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black, but let your statement be yes, yes, no, no. Anything beyond that is evil. And then James says, you are a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, what we say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also do this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. I mean, it's not just foolish, it's evil. It's like we're not there where we should be when we forget that our Lord, the Lord, we don't have a guarantee we're going to be the life. And you start to live with that understanding. And I'm going to take us just how these things sort of wind down when you've gone through a trauma like that, or lived through a trauma like that. This may seem a funny statement. I recall I was going through my final checkup after all the dental work was put in and made these final adjustments, and I spent this time fine-tuning everything. And it's been 2 years now, constantly going to doctors, having them put me back together. And he concludes the visit by saying, I'll see you in 6 months for a checkup. Now, I was accustomed to the idea that I was living with these doctors. They all got to know me, got on good terms. There was one surgeon, when I had secondary surgery, I was lying in the wake-up area, and as I'm opening my eyes, he was leaning over me like this. Okay, I don't know if Dr. Agee, which one, but his Agee. And he goes, I mean, they just bone from my head. So that's why I can't get up. I'm stuck in bed. And he goes, everything went great in there, no disasters happened. And then he runs away. And I'm just waking up. What's he talking about? And it wasn't until later today, because he runs around the hospital, he comes back and says, well, last time, I asked him, what are you talking about? He said, well, last time we did surgery, 9/11 happened. I mean, this is the relationship we have with all the surgeons. I mean, I've lived with them. So then they have this one doctor, Dr. DeSteno, who stole all the teeth, say, I'll see you in 6 months for a checkup. I just walked out into the hallway, and it just hit me. It's over. And it was funny because one of the nurses, I just stopped. And I had to look at her and say, it's over. She, they got to know me, the nurses do. And it was kind of like they realized this was it. This is how it ended. That the accident, now the whole story was over. If you saw Lord of the Rings, there's a scene where Frodo, Sam, and Merry Pippin are sitting in the Green Dragon at the end of everything. And if you've watched the movie, I can really relate to this, they just sat there looking at each other. They couldn't relate to other people around them anymore. They had seen things they can't even share with other people around. They could try to, but, and this is not, I'm not just talking about, it was an example, of course that's a story, but yet, that's very real for people who have gone through traumatic, who've seen destruction and death around them, and lived their chances of living through it, were not great, and yet they did. One time I was taking a flight home, and this is recent too. And I was sitting next to a nurse. I started to share the story, what the Lord did, the accident and everything. She was the only one of all the people over the years that I've shared the accident story with who started asking the right questions, like, how did it change you? What do you think about death now? What is your relationship with the Lord? How did that change? She was the only one who started to dig in deep and said, asking the right question, asking what you would expect a person to have answers for if they've almost been killed or if they, That doesn't happen all the time. But I want to read some quotes from people involved in 9/11. This particular woman is someone who ministered to some of was on ground zero, just being a part of what was going on there, giving some support. And Ian Worker told me of some grotesque and horrible memories he had that constantly interrupted his sleep. Please tell me what to do with the memories. The work they do will mark them for the rest of their lives. It will haunt their sleep and has changed the way they think about everything. She also says, about 3 a.m., I realized a group of them were gathering together and breaking. They must have found something, the young chaplain said. I was overcome with grief. Death was everywhere, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I looked up and saw a piece of the facade of the World Trade Center rising from the rubble. At the end of its beams formed 3 crosses, brilliantly lit by the powerful spotlight. I put my arm around the woman I was with and said, look, he is here. He turned to Jesus. Another man who worked on Ground Zero. I now live in London, but Ground Zero is never far away. I find that the pain is still just below the surface. Here's a woman who was in Afghanistan during 9/11, and she was a prisoner, already declared sentenced to death, but she was rescued as part of the retaliation. She has this to say. The days surrounding 9/11, the war in Afghanistan, and our subsequent heroic rescue changed all of our lives forever. In 10 years, not one day has passed without my feeling the impact of that experience. People often ask me how I recovered, and the response is simple. The grace of God, the prayers of the saints, and the healing community of God's people. But she also has this to say, and I understand exactly what she's trying to say. Personally, God sent me to prison to set me free. Free from fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of harm. And ultimately the fear of losing control. The crisis exposed the weakness of my flesh and proved that God's power is truly perfected in weakness. I learned my life is not my own. I belong to Jesus. I can trust Him with anything, no matter what. Finally, the crisis solidified for all of us our resolve and the importance of the work that we're involved in, and affirmed that no matter the cost, God's presence is always more than enough to sustain us. A while back, Scott quoted some things from Don Piper's 90 Minutes in Heaven, and I remember saying, well, that's interesting. And I finally picked up a copy like a year later, saying, well, just out of curiosity. And I started reading it. And what happened was something I didn't expect. There were 2 sections that grabbed my attention and I was riveted to. Number 1 was not his description of heaven. It was more the case where I was enthralled by the fact that he found words to describe what he's experiencing. Because what happened was, I had experienced something similar during my time in intensive care in the hospital in Keswick, and actually, it just stayed with me for the weeks following. And so, just some of the words he said, I still didn't know why, but the joyousness of the place wiped away any questions. Everything felt blissful, perfect. I can't communicate it, because after I read the words a second time, I said, well, it got as good as it could, I guess. But there is that sense of freedom. Time has no meaning. I wasn't conscious of anything I'd left behind and felt no regrets about leaving family or possessions. And I really felt that strongly. It was as if God had removed anything negative or worrisome from my consciousness. I said this. I said, from the time I came to SICU, I began to experience the freedom of being totally in the Lord's care. I had total peace, knowing the Lord was in complete control. And that sense of freedom diminished as I began taking on responsibilities and concerns. In other words, God has something for us that we don't experience as much as we should. And part of it is we don't trust Him as much as we should. But it is a life. This is kind of the thing you start to realize, that God has prepared for us a life without any pain, without any fear, without any anxiety, no discomfort. And it's hard for us to imagine that because we're here. I was thinking no budget, no concerns. But if you read in Matthew this verse and just really focus on what he's describing, I say to you, do not be worried about your life. Do not be worried about your life. It's not life more than food and your body more than clothing. Look at the birds of the air. And this is kind of why I really need to prepare this message just for this reason. They do not sow, nor do they reap, nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worth much more than that? And why are you worried about clothing? Observe how the lilies of the field grow. They do not toil, nor do they spare. There was a second thing that impressed me and grabbed my attention as I was reading Monuments in Heaven. I was really frustrated because I didn't know what I was supposed to do anymore. I mean, I'm nobody special, but He chose to preserve my life. These are some of the stories you go through. How do you relate to the one who has absolute power to give and take away your life? How do you relate to that person? Especially now you've seen it happen. He gave me this taste of life in His presence. I really knew it's better than here. And so now, what in this life could possibly make life in a fallen world worth enduring? That was the thing I started reading. And Don Piper spent a lot of time on that issue. And for what reason did He preserve my life? But ultimately, it's what could possibly provide the motives to accomplish something in this world, knowing none of the accomplishments will endure. In other words, you start to have a heavenly perspective, and you start to look at everything here, and you realize, what is accomplished? Ultimately. That's tough to kind of say, okay, I'm stuck here. Seems like a bum deal, but you have to really come back to some things. do have a calling. What was it? Be conformed to the image of Christ. And again, it comes back to, well, how does he accomplish it? Suffering. And ultimately, our calling is, Matthew says, just the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. Well, that's kind of what we should be doing. So, and we can't make ourselves that way. He's got to do the work in us. Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind regard one another as more important than yourself. This is what he's called us to. This is why we're still here. This is why he hasn't taken us home. And it's not something that comes naturally. We have to let him do that work in us. And that's what suffering is all about. The sacrifice our Lord Jesus made by coming to earth is far greater than we can ever comprehend. And I wanted to point out, try to imagine life without pain, fear, and anxiety. Try to imagine. I mean, it's really tough. You really have to get into his presence and really spend time with him. And that's the only way. But try to imagine if that's the normal way of life, where you've never experienced that, any pain or suffering. Or maybe you have, but it's forgotten. And now it's been so long you can't even recall or imagine what that pain feels like or feels to you. It's not part of your understanding. To live one day in this life then would be considered torture. And I guess my point is, we see the cross as the pinnacle of Christ's suffering, but the trouble is our baseline is too bound to life on earth. To live one day in this life is torture in comparison to life in the presence of Heavenly Father, and that's what Jesus chose to do. And so we're called to continue that, to still do that. So there's three things that I want to remember. Those who come face to face with death and destruction have learned something. We should speak to them, ask them questions, learn. I found that just below the surface, the people I've talked to all the time, they're all looking for hope, the hope we have, or the hope we should have. Take advantage of that. Talk to those people. People who have come back from serving overseas or in military combat, they have something. You're alive by God's choice and for His purpose. Don't ever, ever, ever doubt that. And that's again going back to my statement. It involves not only believing in God, but believing God. He's got something He's doing. Never forget that God has been and always will be faithful. And there's another statement that R.C. Sproul said, often these blessings are exceedingly well disguised, so well disguised that we can't see the slightest possible good in them. And to reiterate, it involves not only believing in God, but believing God.
Stand. We're going to just move right into the the table, and we're not going to do our normal liturgical elements. We're just going to call you up to come to the table to receive the elements.
It's just that when God personally reveals His love and mercy and our own unworthiness, it becomes quite evident. There can only be one response. And what you're going to see is a time when I came home from the hospital, and my jaw was still held together by wires, plates were in my mouth. I still got fractured ribs. And I'm still chilly because it took a month and a half before I felt normal in the temperature.